Good afternoon, everyone. Want to make sure everyone knows that we are going to be recording this session, and it will be made available for viewing on our partner website probably by sometime next week, so that if anyone needs to review anything, that will be available, and also. It'll also be available for anyone who might not have been able to make it today. We do have some people still filtering in, so I'm going to give it a minute before I begin. All right, so it looks like the flow of people coming in has slowed down. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Once again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for making the time in your day to attend this this training. So what we're going to be talking about is just the upcoming program year. We're going to go over just review some of the processes, some of the rights, some of the responsibilities. We'll be able to talk a little bit about what's changing for this coming program year. We'll be able to talk about any specific challenges that you might have been experiencing, and we'll also be available for questions. So I hope that this is going to be a very useful session for everybody. So the purpose of today's training is to prepare vendors for the program year 2023 EAP season by reviewing common issues and discussing ways to collaborate and improve for the upcoming season. I do want to point out this time that this is not the vendor portal training. Some of you may have been involved back in, it's probably back in March or so when Rowing, our software developer, rolled out a vendor portal to help do transmittals and kind of view payment status. So we are working with Rowing on some enhancements to that. Those enhancements are still in progress. So once those are ready, Rowing will be responsible for conducting a training on those enhancements. What we are going to cover today is an overview of the vendor guide and the MOA, some common areas of issue, including transmittal processing, vendor monitoring, and performance measures, our contact protocols, fuel funds, special programs, and additional resources, and finally, the next steps. So we're going to begin with an overview of our vendor guide and MOA. So IHCDA does provide a vendor guide. The EAP vendor guide is a resource intended to be a convenient reference for the information that you are likely to most need or to need most frequently as an EAP utility vendor partner. The vendor guide will be updated periodically to reflect the current information, policies, and procedures, and it will be posted on the IHCDA partner site at www.in.gov/ a bunch of words and letters. We will be sure that we get that into the chat for everyone. And I know we have one person on the phone as well. And for that person on the phone, we're also going to be sure that we follow up with an email to everyone once we have the slide deck and the recording of today posted. we'll be notifying all of our vendor partners by email. So the current vendor guide was updated in 2019. It is currently in need of an update, and that is something that we are currently working on. We hope to have that updated before transmittals start flowing for this coming program year. And vendors are encouraged to consult the vendor guide first when they have a question about policy or procedure. We try to make the vendor guide very accessible and easy to read and reference, and to kind of have only the information you need in there. Memorandum of Agreements, or MOAs. The MOAs are going to continue to be issued for a 2-year term instead of a 1-year term in order to reduce administrative burden. We are currently working off of MOAs that took effect on October 1st of 2021, and so they will expire on September 30th of 2023. The ACH authorization or waivers, however, will continue to be required annually. This is in accordance with state code. So MOAs and ACH forms are issued electronically in Adobe Sign. And in order to reduce paperwork and expedite the process, we do require that all vendors complete, sign, and submit documents in the Adobe Sign environment, unless they have a technological barrier that prevents them from doing so. And if you do have an issue with completing something in Adobe Sign because of technology, please just let us know, and we will work with you on the best way to get that submitted. So the next several slides are going to cover several items within the MOA that we've received questions on or have seen vendors kind of have issue with. And the first one is going to be on agreement number 3, which is vendor responsibility for other locations. And this specifically deals with companies that are structured where they might have satellite offices or kind of subsidiary companies or subsidiary locations that are organized beneath a parent organization. And so in those scenarios, only the parent company needs to complete an MOA and an ACH form, as long as the deposit information and the W-9 information for all the other locations match that parent. If the subsidiary locations handle their own transmittals as opposed to sending all transmittals to a central location, then those subsidiary locations must be listed on the MOA Attachment B sheet, which is the sheet for satellite locations. In order to streamline the management of vendors, we are seeking to reduce the number of distinct MOAs and ACH authorizations whenever possible, and that's why we do encourage everyone to use that attachment B in those cases where the satellite locations use the same financial and W-9 information. In cases where payment goes to the same bank account, the locations should be grouped under the same parent organization for MOA purposes. And if a specific person at one of these satellite or subsidiary offices needs to be contacted for pledges or transmittals, but not for payment, then this is an issue that would be addressed with the local service providers or LSPs in order to establish that procedure. And it really doesn't impact how we're going to handle the MOA here at ICDA. All right, moving on to agreement number 5, cooperation. So by signing the MOA, the vendor does agree to cooperate with ICDA and the local service provider with regards to sharing information about EAP applicant accounts, including energy consumption and cost, payments, disconnection prevention, restoration of services, arrearage amounts, account status, and other data related to EAP. This includes, but is not limited to, providing billing statements for applicant households, regardless of the billing name of record. Do want to assure everyone that as part of the application process, we do receive consent from all applicants to collect this data. Furthermore, if the account is in the name of a non-household member, we have a form that they complete in which they certify that they have obtained consent from the account holder for this information to be divulged. And the collection of this data is federally mandated in the Liheap statute. Next, we're going to talk about agreement number 10, which involves the acceptance of payment. So in accordance with state code, all payments must be made by electronic funds transfer, or EFT. In order to be paid by a physical check instead of an EFT, the vendor must meet certain conditions. These conditions are that the vendor does not have and is unable to establish a savings or checking account that is capable of receiving EFTs with a financial institution within the business's geographic area without the payment of a service fee. And the vendor must also be able to provide a written statement from its financial institution confirming that they are unable to establish such an account without paying that service fee. So if you do meet those criteria, you're able to reach out to us, let us know that you need that waiver. You would complete the waiver and submit that to us along with that written statement from a financial institution. And then we would pass that along to our controller, who would have to approve it before we were able to approve the check payment. And claim approval and payment notifications will be sent via email from reset@ihcda.in.gov. That is an automated inbox. But just so that you know, if in case you need to whitelist that email address to be sure that you get it, that is the email address that sends out claim approval notifications and payment notifications. Agreement number 12, unallowable expenses. So EAP funds may not be applied to deposits, commercial accounts, garbage collection or disposal, water, sewer, cable, service plans, insurance plans, repayment of fraud or theft losses, setting an LP tank, or any other expenses not directly related to residential energy consumption or delivery. For deliverable fuels, this second one doesn't really count as much, but I know some people are using some metered propane. So EAP funds must provide a continuing service. Therefore, a vendor may not accept EAP funds for a closed or inactive account and apply them to an outstanding amount owed unless the account will be restored. I think that there is some applicability to people who are deliverable as opposed to metered as well there. We need to ensure they're going to continue to maintain an active account that's able to receive deliveries. The gist of it here is that we can't just pay on an old debt that's not going to continue to receive some sort of service. Agreements number 15 and 16 are similar agreements, but one concerns refunds and one concerns overpayments. So I think first thing that I should do, because I'm not sure the slides necessarily do this, is I should clarify the difference between a refund and an overpayment. So a refund is going to be a return of funds that is actually initiated by the utility vendor partner. And a refund is initiated when an account is closed and the account holder leaves behind an outstanding positive credit balance that is represented by EAP benefit dollars. So any outstanding positive credit balance that they leave behind would be a refund to the extent that represents funds that were received through EAP and not the customer's own funds. An overpayment, on the other hand, is triggered by an LSP, and that's it's usually as a result of a quality assurance check or some sort of internal monitoring or audit. But if they discover that an error was made with an application and they have either accidentally given too much benefit, more benefit than the household was in fact eligible to receive, or if they have erroneously approved a household for benefit when the household did not in fact qualify for benefit at all. So refunds and overpayments, they are to be issued on separate checks. And what I mean by that is say you have 4 people close accounts. So you have 4 refunds. We're not necessarily going to look for 4 separate checks for those refunds, but if you have those 4 refunds plus you have an agency that did an overpayment, so you have that kind of 5th pot of funds that needs to come back to us, we would want the four refunds to be on their own check and then the overpayment to be on a separate check. And that's just because those are handled differently by our fiscal team, and issuing those on separate checks ensures that they are going to be able to put the funds in the right place when they process. So refunds must be accompanied by the name of the LSP who originally awarded the funds, the client's name, the client's account number, and the original transmittal number. Overpayments must be accompanied by the overpayment remittance sheet, which contains a lot of that information, the name of the LSP, the client's name, and the client's account number, as well as the original transmittal number. In addition, we have created a register sheet to accompany all refund and overpayment checks, and it also helps assist our fiscal department in properly handling these payments. It makes the process go a lot more smoothly and faster, honestly, and reduces the amount of follow-up that they might have to do with you. And we did introduce that last year. I'm not sure if that is currently on the partner page or not, but that's something I'm going to check on. I'm going to ensure that if it's not already up there, that we get it up there. And I do see, yeah.
I was just going to say we have a hand up on that one.
So I do see that a hand is up. I'm going to ask, because we are coming up on a question slide in just a minute. So I'm going to ask if you can just hold that question just until we get there. We only have 2 more slides to go before we get to that question slide. Next, we have agreement number 18 for equal treatment. And that just states that the vendor shall not treat any household adversely because of EAP assistance. Adverse treatment does include charging different or additional rates, fees, costs, or other charges simply on the basis of a household qualifying for and receiving EAP benefits. So the thrust of that agreement is simply that any additional fees or rates that are charged to one of our clients must be charged for a reason other than just their income level or the fact they receive EAP benefits, and it has to be something that would be applicable to anyone, to any customer who is in a similar situation. And agreement number 24, record keeping. The vendor agrees to maintain an adequate accounting system to allow verification and auditing of the amount of service delivered to eligible households. This includes documentation that Liheap funds were not applied to unallowable costs and that refunds and overpayments were remitted to IHCDA rather than to the customer. And records must be maintained for a period of 3 years following the close of a program year. So, for example, our upcoming program year, 2023, will be closing on September 30th of 2023. So all of those records must be maintained through September 30th of 2026. I do want to point out here kind of the corollary of that retention period, and that is that we do strongly recommend that that you also, in addition to making sure that you have a system to maintain these records for 3 years, that you have another kind of procedure set up to ensure that you are properly disposing of records once that 3 years has lapsed. And the reason for that is because this is a government provide benefit. We are compelled to comply with records requests, and if someone requests records, if we have them, we need to release them. And so even though we are only required to hold records for 3 years, if we do hold on to them for longer and someone happens to request them, it can become very burdensome to dig through and supply all these records. So we want to make sure that we're only keeping the minimum that we're required to keep. It just helps to save on that burden in the event that we do have a request for those records. Okay, so any questions on what we have just covered? So you can put questions into the chat. You can use the raise hand function. For those of you who are on the phone, I know we have 2 people who are on the phone right now. I believe *6 is how you unmute yourself. And I believe it was Mr. Ackerman. Was it you who had your hand up earlier? Okay, well, Karen, I see you have your hand up.
I had a question about I have 2 companies that I deal with, and I'm getting funds that they're mixed up. They're paying the wrong company, and I don't know how to get that fixed. So how do I get that fixed?
I think we're going to have to talk offline about this one since so hyper specific. Can I ask which one? Who you're with?
Gales Propane. And
Okay.
County Gas is being paid for Gales Propane.
Oh, okay. Good to have a face to put with a name, Karen. Yeah, I will. And this is all with SCAP, right?
The rental assistance thing did it too.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't speak to the rental assistance, but I will definitely touch base with you and try to coordinate with you and Julie to make sure that gets taken care of.
Also, Gales Propane doesn't have a portal.
And that's probably, I'm guessing, because you're the person of record for both of them, and that's something else we can talk about offline.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I'll follow up with you. Dawn O'Reilly.
Hi, I'm here with Lisa Fowler. She's probably the one that wants to ask the question.
Hi, Tom. We're with MFA Oil. And when you were discussing overpayment, the overpayments and saying that you have maybe possibly at certain times issued payment for a customer, and then you would request the monies back. What happens in the case that we've gotten the pledge, we've delivered on that pledge, we've taken the monies that have been paid and applied against that delivery, and then we receive an overpayment? That causes concern for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So on paper, the answer is that basically it it becomes the customer's responsibility to pay you back. And if you're not able to take, because I do understand there's an inherent risk there. So if you're not able,
I don't have a problem with if we've gotten the pledge and we haven't delivered.
Right.
I don't have a problem
Sure.
with that or whatever, or we've got funds sitting on his customer account. But
Mhm.
say we get the pledge, we deliver, you guys pay us,
Mhm.
then I feel as a qualified vendor, the responsibility of gaining that funds back should be shared by y'all because you guys have committed that money. You have said, we've vetted this person, we are pledging this money. You know, it puts us at serious risk, you know,
Right.
because we do millions of dollars worth of energy assistance. We don't just do a couple 100,000, we do millions in one season.
Absolutely.
So that causes a red flag to me of, okay, wait, I want to make sure that I have this funds hit my customer account before I send fuel, which is, that's not how we're operating today. We're operating on the IHCDA says that they're going to stand good for $1,200. This person needs propane. They're in serious need. We're going to deliver propane. But if you're saying that there's a chance that you could pull that money back, well, then I'm going to wait until I have actual funds on that person's account because we're putting ourselves up for a huge financial risk if we
Right.
don't.
Right. And I do understand that risk. I want to assure you that I do understand that risk. You know, this is why we do encourage our subgrantees to be sure that they are trying to do some of this quality check proactively as they go, so that they don't come into a surprise like that. Um, the bottom line is ultimately, since we are the grantee of record with the HHS, and this is funded by taxpayer dollars, if we find that our subgrantees did award funds inappropriately, we do have a responsibility to ensure that is restored to the grant. So if you know, it's we do request that you send those back and you know, kind of collect from the customer. If you're unable to do so, ultimately, it's it's a local service provider who made the error, and ultimately they're going to be the ones on the hook for it. So
Okay.
if you're unable to recover from the customer, then what happens at that point is that the subgrantee has to actually pay us back out of their unrestricted funds.
Okay, so because I mean we're pretty diligent on making sure. I mean, I don't know if you remember last year, we had an incident with a daughter who
Mhm.
was illicitly using her father's funds, had applied under her father's name when her father was like 101 years old or something in a nursing care facility. So we stopped. We stopped right there. We returned the funds to you because we realized, hey, this isn't right. There is something weird going on, and we have no problem with that. It's if it's after the fact, and we would even go out and pump the tank if need be. We could
Mhm.
go and regain our propane if it's immediate, if we know right then and there.
Sure.
But if it's months down the line, there's some shared responsibility.
Absolutely. And like I said, we do encourage our subgrantees, because ultimately, you know, we're not the ones who are handling the applications or have the files in hand. It's our local subgrantees, the LSPs, who have those. So we really rely on them to do their due diligence here. And so we encourage them, especially with the bulk fuels, you know, try to do those quality assurance checks that you're going to do them proactively. Try to do them, if possible, before you send out the transmittal. Um, and we do actually have a policy there that any QAs that they're going to do, they should be doing within 45 days of the of the of the eligibility determination, the initial determination. And because of our transmittal schedule, the idea is we tell them that really 60 days is the maximum amount of time that should go by before if you have to send an overpayment, it should be within 60 days at the absolute extreme. So after 60 days, our expectation is, well, if you found an error and it's outside that window, you're just going to be repaying it to us.
Okay, so, and now here's and this is kind of in conjunction with the whole payback.
Mm-hmm.
How are you all handling death notices? Say we find out that Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they applied together. Mr. Smith passes during the heating season. Are you allowing Mrs. Smith to retain that entire funding? Or how are you handling this?
Yeah, as long as Mrs. Smith was on the application as an applicant, she is part of the approved household, and so she is eligible to continue using those funds. You do not have to send those back to us as a refund, and if you have a policy where the account name changes, so the account is technically changing from what we awarded it to, we just ask that you let us know, and that you're establishing a new account for Mrs. Smith, and that you're transferring those remaining funds over to her.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Tom.
Absolutely. That was a great question. Thank you. All right. I know that we did have another hand up earlier. Does anyone else have any questions on the MOA agreements here before I move on? All right. Well, we will have a more general question and answer time at the end as well. So if anyone thinks of anything, just hold on to that, and we'll be able to swing back around to it. Okay, so I know that this doesn't really apply to any of you, but I just want to be sure that you are aware of this. So reminder, a moratorium. Indiana Code 8-1-2-121 is the moratorium legislation. It was enacted by the Indiana General Assembly in 1983. It was last amended in 2006. And it ensures that electric and/or gas utility service is continued while eligibility is being determined for persons applying through Liheap assistance. It is effective from December 1st through March 15th of any given year. And it only applies to utility providers who supply metered electricity or natural gas service to residential customers. So it's just something good for you to know that that your customers, when they apply for this, they are getting that protection from shutoff for their electric service. All right, common areas of issue. So we're going to talk about the transmittal process, vendor monitoring, and performance measures. So transmittals, as you know, serve as the official record of the benefit for which a client has been approved. Now, there are instances, and I kind of alluded to that earlier when I said that we encourage LSPs to try to do some of their quality assurance checks before sending the transmittal out. So there might be times where an intake staff might call in a pledge, and then when you get the final transmittal, there might be a bit of a discrepancy there. It might be a different amount than what you had initially expected. So if there is a discrepancy between a pledge received via an LSP contact and the amount on the transmittal amount is going to be considered correct. Once again, the transmittal is the official record of the benefit. And transmittals are not valid for payment until they've been signed by both a representative of the LSP and a representative from the vendor. And any changes made to the transmittal would need to be made prior to the execution of that transmittal. We have instructed all of our LSPs to ensure that the transmittals are generated and sent to all of you on at least a biweekly basis, and we strongly recommend that they actually run those transmittals weekly. Do note that it is the vendor's responsibility to fully review the transmittal before signing it, and this review should include ensuring that the client that all the clients listed on the transmittal are indeed customers of your utility, that the name, the delivery or service address, and the account numbers that are on the transmittal all match what you have in your records, and that the account is currently active and not scheduled for disconnection, cancellation, or closure at the customer's request. If there are any errors or if there are any accounts that need to be removed because they just don't qualify or they're not actually your customers, it is your responsibility to mark these changes directly onto the transmittal report and adjust the total amount if necessary before signing and returning the transmittal report to the LSP. So utility vendors should make every effort to try to return signed and or corrected transmittals to the LSP within 7 days of when you receive them from the LSP. If this is going to be delayed past a week, we strongly recommend that you keep an open line of communication with the LSP in order to inform them of the delay, and also let them know when they might anticipate receiving that transmittal. And once an LSP has received a signed transmittal back from the vendor, the LSP then has 7 days to mark any corrections or changes that you may have made on it to update their records and to submit that transmittal to us for payment. Upon submission to ICDA, the transmittal goes through a series of fiscal reviews. It goes through a series of 4 reviews. Each review is allowed 7 days. So that payment should be generated within 30 days of when the LSP submits it to us. So the general timeline here is, if you take 7 days before you send it to the, let's say everything goes at the maximum amount of time. So you take 7 days to get the transmittal back to the LSP. LSP takes 7 days before they send it to us. Typically, our internal checks take about 28 days. So we are looking at a 42-day turnaround if everything is going at the maximum amount of time given. So we're looking at a month and a half at that point. Our goal is absolutely to get these out to you as quickly as possible. And to a degree, so in that scenario that I just gave you where all of our reviews, each step took 7 days, I do want to tell you that's not typically our norm. So the first step of our internal review is the claim review. And I will typically, there are days, especially there are times when we might have some vacations or some people on the fiscal team out sick where it might take the full 7 days, but I typically see that happening within 2 or 3 days. The next review usually takes the full 7 days. But then the third level review usually only takes a few days, and the fourth review typically is the next day. So really, we do give ourselves that 28-day time frame, but we're usually doing it a lot faster than that. So the faster that you can get it to the LSP, and we have really been making it part of our messaging to the network, to our subgrantee network, to be sure that they're not sitting on those transmittals once you've returned them to them. It's, some of you on here know I used to do that position at the LSP, and my goal was always if I received something back from the vendor, I would turn it around and submit to ICDA that same day. there's really no excuse for the subgrantees to sit on them. So we're really trying to push them to be quicker about that. We know that some of you have experienced some delays in those payments, and we're really trying to tighten that up where we have power over it, and to use our influence to move things along where we don't have the direct power. But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of talk about what that time frame is, why those time frames are, and what we can do to tighten them up a bit. And do note, and I know this kind of is where that risk comes in that that you were just talking about, Lisa. But the MOA does require that the benefit is noted to the customer's account upon approval of the transmittal, not upon receipt of the actual funds. And basically, the reason for that is especially with with people who are heating with deliverable bulk fuel rather than metered fuel. At least with metered fuel, there's the there's the moratorium that keeps them connected. But with bulk metered fuel, or with bulk deliverable fuel rather, we don't necessarily, looking at the time frames where we just talked about how the maximum time frame, if everything goes to the maximum amount of time, it could be a month and a half. We don't want people waiting a month and a half in the dead of winter for their delivery. So and to get back to the overpayments, if an LSP discovers that an error has been made in benefit or eligibility determination, the LSP may award the client additional funds, or they may submit a negative transmittal to the vendor accompanied by an overpayment remittance. The LSP may award additional funds at any time. So that's not necessarily, if they are outside their typical QA timeframe and they're QAing 90 days later, and they discover, oh, we should have given this person $100 more. We're fine with them giving them those extra funds at any time. However, as we said, overpayment remittances must be submitted to the vendor within 60 days of that initial approval. So if an overpayment remittance is received more than 60 days following initial approval, then you may absolutely inform the LSP that the window to request overpayment remittance has lapsed, and it becomes the LSP's responsibility to repay the benefit out of their unrestricted funds. If you're in a position to choose to do so, you may choose to accept the overpayment remittance at your discretion, even after the 60-day window has elapsed. As we said, it does become the customer's responsibility at that point to repay those funds to you. So when a vendor receives a negative transmittal, they are to follow the same procedure as they do for a regular transmittal. After returning the signed negative transmittal to the LSP, the vendor will also sign the overpayment remittance, and the signed overpayment remittance is to be sent to ICDA along with the return payment register sheet and the check, and that those funds are reinvested into the program to help fund benefits for other customers. And just to review, an overpayment occurs because an applicant was accidentally awarded more funds than they were actually eligible for under program rules, or they were approved for benefits when they were, in fact, not actually eligible. Therefore, any delinquency caused by the removal of an overpayment from the customer's account becomes the customer's responsibility to pay. Again, my goal is not to have you in this situation. We're trying to do everything we can. We're trying to simplify some of the income calculation for the intake staff of the agencies. We're trying to make our policies transparent and easy to understand for the intake staff, so that we're trying to prevent these mistakes from happening in the first place. Because we don't want you to be in that position. We certainly don't want our low-income clients to be in that position of having to pay back for a benefit that they thought they were getting. course, in order to keep payments on time and not negatively impact customers and clients, we are asking all vendors to return signed transmittal CLSPs within 1 week of receipt, as we already talked about. In compliance with agreement number 24, not 224, that was my mistake. All vendors must maintain records of all transmittal reports. And claim notification emails will note which transmittals have been approved for payment and the total for each transmittal. Please use these emails in conjunction with the transmittal reports for the purposes of correctly distributing funds and reconciling claims. So, you know, I know that, you know, a lot of you have been doing this for a long time. And are kind of familiar with this system. For those who might be newer, basically the gist there is that when the payment notifications come through, they're not going to have individual account information or client or customer names rather, or customer account numbers. It's basically going to tell you this transmittal has been approved. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to match up that transmittal number with the actual transmittal, so then you'll have a record of which actual accounts are being paid on. And please remember that no Liheap funds are ever to be released back to the customer. All unused funds from an account closing are to be sent back to IHCDA within 60 days of that account closure, along with the refund register sheet, just so we know where the funds are from and therefore what we are supposed to be, where we're supposed to be putting them. Okay, so that was just a lot of information about transmittals. So here's some discussion and question time. Please feel free if you have any questions about the process, please ask those. If there are any other issues that you might have experienced that I didn't address, or if there's any additional training or support that you or your team needs.
Hey, Tom, it's Lisa again.
Hey.
Okay, so I've got a couple of things. First is Kansas EA has now changed to where they're first in, first out, which means it does not matter whether it's customer funds or Liheap funds. First funding in is the first funding out. Whereas Missouri, and how I understood Indiana was it was use Liheap funds first, customer funds second. Are we still in Indiana good to use Liheap funds first?
I would absolutely recommend Liheap funds first. You know, since in the case of an account closure, those funds come back to us rather than going to the customer. We would prefer our low-income clients get the full use of that benefit, and then, you know, be able to have their own any of their own funds that are invested in the account be able to come back to them.
Okay, beautiful. Second is more of a request than a question.
Okay.
I'm sure I'm not the only vendor that would like this. Can we get an updated listing of all the contacts for your LSPs with the staff names and where their coverage is, like what counties they're covering?
Yeah, I can do that. As far as the staff goes, we're probably just going to be able to provide the actual EAP manager.
Yeah, that's
and
what I
then,
need.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was gonna say, and if you need the intake staff, I'm sure that EAP manager could provide that to you.
Perfect. And my last thing is because we're LP, we're propane providers. Occasionally, because these are low income customers, if they are customer owned tanks, we run across situations where we have untank safe situations. And our policy, well, actually it's federal law. We cannot put propane into any situation that our driver or our employees deem unsafe.
Absolutely.
How would you like us to address those situations?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. And I think it involves some technicalities that's probably a bit beyond my current understanding. So, I do know that typically when a tank is empty, you have to run a safety check, like a
test.
pressure check,
Mhm.
correct?
Yes.
And I know that we do allow that to be paid for out of EAP funds. So in the case where it fails and they're not able to provide that delivery, what typically would be your next steps there? What would that look like?
Okay, well, first of all, they've got to determine, why is it unsafe? Is it unsafe because the customer has allowed the tank out, the exterior of the tank for like weeds, grasses, paraphernalia, trash to be impacted around the tank, which makes it an unsafe hazard for our drivers to even approach the tank? Or is it actually something that they've discovered during the leak test? Is there a leak in the line somewhere? Is a regulator bad? Is the tank rusting? I mean, there's a whole plethora of issues that it could be. I do know that the state of Missouri changed their protocol. State of Missouri has now gone to, when we get a report back from the field that this tank is unsafe, we're to report to that local office, hey, we've got EA funds for this individual. This is what's going on. You know, if it's something like a bad regulator or a bad coupling, they usually will approve for us to go in and replace the regulator or replace the coupling or whatever. But if it's a line issue going into the house, that is extremely dangerous. And you're looking at explosion and fire risks there. And you need somebody a little bit, you need a higher level of service.
Sure.
And at that point, Missouri is taking over and having those conversations with that customer. If they can't pay for a load of propane, they definitely cannot pay for a tank repair.
Absolutely.
So I would strongly encourage you guys to talk internally and figure out what you're going to have the standard procedure be when we come across these situations, so we know how to report it to you.
Yeah, no, this definitely sounds like it's something that hasn't been addressed with our policy in the past, and obviously it's something that I would have to have internal discussions on. You know, I don't want to just jump into a policy. I want to be sure it's that's well considered. So this is something I'm going to take back to the team, and you know, it's probably something that we're going to have to roll out as a new policy for next year. So I'll say in the meantime, if you come across any of these situations, reach out to us, let us know, and we'll take it from there.
Do you want us reporting it to your level, or do you want us reporting it to the LSPs?
I would say probably LSP, but so CC both me and the Liheap Inbox.
Sure.
That way everyone is on the same page.
Right.
Cool. You give me something big to think about. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions? All right, moving on. So vendor monitoring and best practices. What is vendor monitoring? So some of you may have gone through some vendor monitoring recently. The purpose of vendor monitoring is to ensure compliance with Liheap by the utility vendor. It is also an opportunity to improve processes and let us know where areas of confusion or additional assistance are needed. Vendor monitoring is a federally mandated component of the Liheap statute as indicated on the MOA. And all vendors that participate in the state of Indiana's Liheap are subject to vendor monitoring. Monitoring is conducted as a desktop review. So those of you who've gone through it, recently, you may have worked with Jolie here. We are currently in the process of hiring an additional staff person to assist with vendor communications and monitoring. Once we get that person hired, that is probably going to be your main contact for a lot of that kind of stuff. So the general structure of vendor monitoring is you would be sent a 30-day letter notifying you when the session is going to begin. Vendors will be required to submit requested documentation prior to the start of the monitoring session. There's also an energy utility supplier survey that is required as part of the monitoring session. And then all vendors being monitored will receive an assessment completion report within 30 days of the ICDA completing that desktop review. Vendors will be required to complete that energy utility supplier survey. And what's going to happen during the monitoring is a sampling of approved accounts found on an EAP transmittal from the program year will be randomly chosen for review. And unregulated utility vendors would be required to supply fuel delivery dates and fuel types along with any requested account information. And finally, because it is federally mandated, all vendors are required to comply with any request for additional information or documentation as a part of vendor monitoring as stated in the MOA. So here are some best practices, some of which have come out of some of our vendor monitoring sessions. All vendors should create written processes to promote consistency and program integrity. In turn, those processes can be submitted at the time of monitoring to show the utility's processes and program compliance. All vendors should perform internal quality assurance audits on EAP customer accounts. All vendors should create a system to ensure that unallowable expenses are not being paid using EAP funds. All vendors should create a 3-year record retention and destruction policy for all EAP documentation, including electronic documentation. All vendors should strive to meet all reporting deadlines. This allows ICDA to fulfill federal reporting requirements and make effective program changes. Vendors should develop outreach strategies. Outreach is an important aspect of the Energy Assistance Program. It helps fill in gaps in services so that low-income households can keep warm during the winter. We are currently working with our internal marketing team on additional outreach material for this program year. Once we have some updated material, we will be posting them to that partners website that was mentioned earlier. So that's going to be kind of the new home for that material, and you're welcome to use that material and send it out to any one of your customers who might voice that they are having difficulty meeting their needs if they state that they need some sort of assistance. And then please ensure that you are providing clients with accurate information. We have often seen on some of our vendor websites, for instance, links to the wrong websites. And for instance, if you're referring people to the online application or just even to more information about Liheap, the correct link to send them to is http://eap.ihcda.in.gov. So that page kind of acts as the front door to our online application. It gives them a rundown of what they need in order to apply, kind of a brief overview of the program. It helps connect them with their appropriate LSP. It gives all kinds of rights and responsibility statements that we're required to disclose to them before they apply. So it's kind of the one-stop shop there for information about the Energy Assistance Program. All right, did we have any questions on monitoring or best practices? All right, moving on to performance measures. So per performance measure data, the collection of this data is mandated by the Liheap statute. It's a federal requirement. And the purpose of performance measures data is to demonstrate reduction of energy burden and to assist us in crafting our policy in order to target the highest benefits to the households with the highest energy burdens and the lowest income. So every year we ask several vendors to submit performance measures data, which includes annual energy usage and costs for all customers who have received Liheap benefits. And we cross-reference this data with our own annual income calculations. Some of you may have submitted some of this information recently. We were working with Apprise, who are some contractors based out of New Jersey, who actually contract with the Federal Department of Health and Human Services to provide training and technical assistance. And basically, we've had some turnover over here, and it impacted our processes. So Apprise was working with us to help us kind of look at what our procedures were with our performance measures data collection, and to help us kind of shore up those processes. So so this might be something that some of you have gone through recently. But if you receive a request for performance measure data, please coordinate with your team and IHCDA in order to ensure timely submission of all requested data in order to remain in compliance with these federal requirements. So I am going to be, this is going to be something that is probably also going to fall under that vendor communications person that we were talking about earlier that we're in the process of hiring. However, because we don't have that person right now, you can probably expect over the next month or so, some of you are probably going to be getting something from me asking you for some of this data. And it should be relatively easy to provide. So I'm trying to remember the exact format of the form that we use, but if I recall correctly, I'm basically going to send you a list of your customers who have received EAP over the program year 2022, and it will include the your account numbers to make it easy for you to find. And I'm pretty sure all that you have to supply to me is how much fuel they ordered over the period of a year, over 12 consecutive months, and what the total dollar cost of that fuel was. And then on my end, I will take that and I will match it up with the income. And we will be doing all the processing here. So all we need from you literally is going to be that consumption and cost data. So the other point about that is that so we're going to be looking at performance measures for program year 2022, which of course was October 1st of 2021 through September 30th of 2022. And we're looking for 12 consecutive months as long as it crosses over that time frame at least partially. So if you're able to provide October 1st through September 30th, that's fantastic. However, if your system isn't set up to be able to provide that, if you're only able to provide, say, calendar year 2021, January 1st, 2021 through December 30th, we're still hitting that time frame because of the October 1 through December 30th or 31st. So that would be fine as long as it touches the program year, we can use it. So having said that, any more questions or discussion about performance measures? Moving right along. Going to be able to give you guys some time back to your day today. All right, let's talk about some contact protocols. So to help reduce confusion and streamline communication, you should ensure that you're always communicating with the appropriate entity. So in most cases, the LSP will be your primary point of contact. However, in some cases, IHCDA might be your primary point of contact. One thing I do want to point out is that IHCDA is never the primary point of contact for clients or EAP recipients. And we do ask you and your representatives not to ever provide IHCDA contact information directly to customers, whether or not they're EAP recipients. They should always be contacting their LSP directly. And if IHCDA needs to intervene in an issue, that escalation should be coming from the LSP rather than from the applicant themselves. So the LSP is going to be your primary point of contact for questions about a specific client or household, questions about benefit, questions about submission of a transmittal, confirming the application status of one of your customers, or for notification of suspected customer meter tampering or unauthorized use when the customer is an EAP client or applicant. IHCDA would be your primary point of contact for issues such as questions about payment that you are unable to answer after review of your transmittals and claim approval emails, questions about the terms of the MOA, any problems getting information from the LSPs. We know that during the pandemic, sometimes responsiveness was an issue, and we do invite you, if you've tried reaching out a couple times and you're just not getting a response, please do let us know, and we will ensure that they get in touch with you. Follow up on a refund or energy benefit transfer. And if you have any suspicion of fraud or misconduct from an LSP, please do let us know that. And as far as your customers, all referrals to Liheap from the vendor should be made to the appropriate LSP or to 211. 211 can either be reached by phone or via a web address in 211.communityos.org. And of course, as mentioned earlier, customers can also always be referred to eap.ihcda.in.gov for more detailed information, for referrals to their LSP, and also for access to online application. When you're contacting IHCDA, we do encourage you to please use the Liheap Inbox, and that's liheap@ihcda.in.gov. So that's a shared mailbox that the entire department can access. It ensures that your message can be read and addressed regardless of whether any one particular person is absent. And the fiscal department is separate from EAP. They do not have access to that mailbox, but if you're having a fiscal issue, you can let us know and we will pass that along to our fiscal team. I do want to also add here that please, while we do want the emails to go to the Liheap inbox to ensure that you're not relying on a specific person being in the office to be able to answer it, especially if it's an escalated issue, please feel free to CC me on that email as well if you want. Like I said, I do have access to that mailbox. If I know that members of my team are in the office, I tend to focus on my own inbox and not peruse the Liheap inbox as much. So if it's something that you want me to be aware of and in the loop on, just feel free to CC me on that. Just to be sure that my eyes fall on it. And does anyone have any questions about the contact protocols? Okay. So
Karen,
here. Oh,
Karen, you have your hand up.
sorry, Karen.
I just wanted to see if you could repeat that email.
Oh, yeah. So it's Liheap, LIHEAP @ihcda.in.gov. And we can put in the chat as well, which thank you, Jolie. So here is an updated map of our service area. It is largely the same. There has been a change down in the southeastern portion of the state. If you operate in Clark, Floyd, or Harrison counties, you will be working with some different people than you have before. So Clark and Floyd will now be served by Ohio Valley Opportunities, or OVO. They have already been serving Jennings, Jefferson, and Scott counties for some time, but they expanded into Clark and Floyd. Well, they are expanding into Clark and Floyd beginning on October 1st. And Lincoln Hills Developmental Corporation, or LHDC, they currently serve Spencer, Perry, and Crawford counties, and they're actually going to expand into Harrison County beginning October 1st. Lincoln Hills will be partnering with Harrison County Community Services. So they're kind of partnering with an entity that's already been there and has been assisting the current subgrantee with Harrison County applications. So they're really going to be able to capitalize on that experience that Harrison County Community Services has, as well as just the establishment that they already have in that county. OVO, my understanding is they've just opened a new office right along the Clark and Floyd County line. And anyone who has worked with Angela and OVO knows that they do fantastic work. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing them move into Clark and Floyd and really help with the outreach there. But yeah, and pursuant to that request earlier, we will be sure that the partner website is updated with contact information, or that we send that contact information out to all of you by email. All right, we are closing in on wrapping up here, but let's move on to fuel funds, special programs, and additional resources. So some vendors have established private funds or other programs to offer additional assistance to qualified low-income households. IHCDA encourages utility vendors to continue to look for innovative ways of offering additional benefits or programs to their low-income customers. These can be developed independently or in collaboration with LSPs or other organizations. If you would like to develop a special program or fuel fund, IHCDA encourages you to coordinate with INCA, that's the Indiana Community Action Association, or any LSPs that you work with for feedback or ideas. And at this point, I guess I just wanted to open up to some discussion, see if anyone has any additional resources they've used in the past they found have been useful, or if there's any additional support that you need from IHCDA or the LSP or the LSPs. Is there anything that we can do to help you with this shared mission of stay warm in the winter?
Hey, Tom, we had a question if the map was on the website. I don't believe that exact map is. I know we have the one that shows by county, but that's definitely something we could probably drop into that vendor.
Yeah, I don't think there's a concern with putting that on the partner webpage. Okay, well, moving on to kind of an overview of the next program year. So here's the general calendar for the program year. So the federal program year 2023 will be opening on October 1st of 2022. Because that is a Saturday this year, in order to provide equitable access, the online application will open to the public on Monday, October 3rd, 2022. That way, people who are applying online have the same access as people who are going to be applying with their LSP. October 3rd is when LSPs may begin to distribute mail-in applications or drop-off applications to general public households who do not qualify as at risk. November 1st, 2022 will be the statewide start of the Energy Assistance Program. So that's when in-person appointments will begin. That's when the LSPs will begin sending out transmittals to utility vendor partners. And that's also when applicant notification letters will begin to be sent to clients. May 15th, 2023 at 5:00 p.m. will be the end of the EAP application period. That's 5:00 p.m. Eastern time, by the way. So we're going to have our online application system stop accepting applications at 4:59 and 59 seconds. And the LSPs will also stop accepting at 5:00. We expect so after people apply, we do give the LSPs 2 weeks to process those applications. We do give a day allowance because of Memorial Day happening. So May 30th, 2023 would be when all incomplete EAP applications should be fully processed. If any of our LSPs are having difficulties, we do allow them to request extensions on a case-by-case basis, but we do mostly expect them to be done by May 30th. As long as they're done by May 30th, we expect them to have the transmittal submitted by June 10th at the latest. And then following that, timeline, hopefully all vendors should be reconciled by June 24th. I did want to, before I close things out, I wanted to ensure and just kind of hope that this isn't taking anyone by surprise or off guard. Has everyone here heard from the LSPs with whom they work about additional benefits for customers? Dawn?
What does fully reconciled mean? Is that an internal process or is that something we're supposed to be doing June 24th?
No, that's internal. That's internal.
Okay, don't
Yeah.
do that to me, Thomas.
I'm sorry, Lisa. No, what I mean by that is that all the corrections and changes on those final transmittals should be done, and basically they should have all of those transmittals submitted for payment by that time. So that's all I meant is they should have.
Except for this inflation benefit that they're all getting.
Yeah, so that's when. So yesterday we had this training for the natural gas and electric providers, and as I was going over the slide, that's when I remembered, like, oh, I should make sure that everyone has actually been contacted by their local service providers about the inflation benefit that we're giving everyone this year. Yeah, and I do have to apologize that this is coming so very, very late in the year this year. We've actually been working on this for a while, and we were prepared to release this probably about a month ago, and then we had some last minute changes due to our fiscal team. Our fiscal team brought up some concerns. Our legal team brought up some concerns, and our software vendor had to make some changes because they didn't understand what we were asking for at first. So that pushed us back about a month from where we were planning to be. So I do have to apologize for that. That was all things that just came up kind of last minute and out of our control. But is there anyone on this call right now who does not know what we're talking about with the inflation benefit? Because if so, we need to have a very different conversation, and I need to be sure that I know who your LSP is so that we can be sure that they are communicating with you. I'm hoping that not hearing anything is a good sign and a sign that everyone has heard from their LSPs. Karen.
Are you talking about what they're calling the winter flush?
Yeah, they love to use that word, don't they? Yeah, it's we're using some of our we had an unprecedented amount of funds this year. We gave an unprecedented amount of benefits this year. But we still have some additional funding here, and with just the general inflation and the way the inflation seems to be hitting the energy market harder than a lot of the other markets, we wanted to take this opportunity to provide additional benefits to our already approved households to ensure that they are able to be in a good place moving into the winter, and that we're not moving into the winter when we're not going to have such an influx of funds and having people in, even higher levels of crisis than they usually are. So, yeah, so I believe, awarded $250 per household per utility. So, yeah, sounds like hopefully you've all received at least notice of that, if not the actual transmittals. Hopefully most of you have received the actual transmittals at this point. But we are, these are households obviously who, I mean, they're from early in the program year. They've already gone through whatever QA and monitoring they're going to go through. So at this point, they're approved for the year. As long as they still have active service at their address, it should be a straightforward thing. The only thing really you would probably need to do is remove any accounts that might have closed from the applicant moving or otherwise not maintaining an active account since whenever they were initially approved to now. And I have been advising the LSPs through the year to please, make sure that they're taking note of applicants who move or who close their accounts so that they're able to proactively remove them before they send the transmittals off to you. I don't know how much that's happened, but I was trying. All right. Does anyone have any last questions? Anything they want to add? Any discussion points? All right, well, I really, really want to thank everyone for attending this training and for the hard work that you do to help make EAP a successful program. I want to thank everyone for taking the time out today and for being engaged and for asking such helpful and thoughtful questions. Once again, if you have any questions or concerns, you can reach out anytime to Liheap at ihcda.in.gov. You can also email me directly. You can CC me if you're emailing Liheap, etc. IHCDA will be updating our vendor guide and the marketing material in preparation for the 2023 program year. Once again, we will be posting that to the partner website. And just as a reminder, we are still working with our software developer, Rowing, on enhancements to the vendor portal for the 2023 year. Once those are completed, then they will be able to proceed with scheduling a training, and we will be sure that you get an invitation to that training. And so, yeah, I will, once we get this, so it's going to take us a little bit of time to get this uploaded. Usually when we send this to our marketing communication team, it has a few days of turnaround before it gets posted. But we'll be sure that we get this posted along with the slide deck and along with that territory map. And we will email that. We will email our entire vendor distribution list to let you know once that's all posted. And we'll also make sure that we email you the contacts for the LSPs. And Jolie, did you have anything to add?
Just wanted to reiterate, thank you so much for all that you do for our program. And it's always nice to be able to collaborate. So if you have ideas as the season gets started or there's ways we can help, please don't hesitate to reach out. It really takes all of us to make this go between our vendors, the LSPs, and us. So please reach out. Thank you for your time and taking this training. And hopefully we'll have a great 2023 season.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and I will talk to you all later. Karen, if you want to stay on, we can talk through what's going on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You want me to just say it?
One second. Let me Okay.
Okay. Maybe I should just get the thing.
Yeah. We can probably stop the recording, Jolie.